You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Hoorah!
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And, of course, we delivered the good news earlier in today's show about Arizona's medical marijuana law passing by about 4,000 votes, a little over 4,000 votes, managed to get that passed. 50.13%. Wow. Glad that you guys pulled that off. So the medical marijuana map has been updated at normal.org. We have shaded in Arizona representing medical, so that's really cool. I wanted to go ahead and give you a look at this new law, the Arizona medical marijuana law, because there's a lot of good in it, and there's some things that are a little sketchy, but overall, I think this is a tremendous victory for patients in Arizona and for the movement in general. So I've got 30 facts for you here. We'll go through them real quick. 30 facts about the Arizona new medical marijuana law. Number one, the allowable amount of marijuana for patients and caregivers is 2.5 ounces. 2.5 ounces, that's a little low, but that's okay. 2.5 is better than 0. All right. Number two, if a patient or caregiver is allowed to cultivate, the limit is 12 plants that must be grown in an enclosed, locked facility defined as a closet, room, greenhouse, or other enclosed area, which to me sounds as if there'll be no outdoor marijuana growing. Yeah. Oh well. Enclosed locked facility, though, that's the definitions. Number three, the qualifying conditions include cancer, glaucoma, HIV/AIDS, hepatitis C, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, Crohn's disease, Alzheimer's agitation, cachexia or wasting syndromes, severe and chronic pain. Interesting to see if severe and chronic will, cause any complications there. Severe nausea, seizures, seizure disorders like epilepsy, and severe and persistent spasms like multiple sclerosis. So these are pretty standard. This is pretty much what most of the medical marijuana states have as qualifying conditions. Number four, caregivers must be 21 years old and pass criminal background check for certain felonies, which include violent crimes, drug trafficking felonies, and the such. Number five, caregivers can serve no more than 5 patients and must keep a card for each one. So that'll be interesting. You have to have 5 cards on you at all times. Caregivers may receive reimbursement for actual expenses, not labor, from their own patients only. So unlike the Oregon law, where if I'm a patient and I meet a caregiver somewhere, I can reimburse that caregiver. No. In Arizona, it has to be your specific caregiver is the only person that you can reimburse. Number 7, this is the one that frightens me a little bit. Number 7 says, patients and caregivers' medical marijuana cards last for a year and will contain their photo, name, address, birth date, and an indication whether medical marijuana is allowed to be cultivated at home. Now, number 12, a little farther down, says any patient who lives within 25 miles of a dispensary may not cultivate their own medical marijuana. So that means the only people who will be allowed to grow at home are people who live out in the sticks, out in the rural areas. So they have to carry around a card with their name, photo, address, and an indication that they're growing marijuana at home out there in the rural country in the sticks where it takes a long time for 911 to respond. I don't think that's a very good idea. That sounds to me like if a patient loses their wallet, they're looking for a home invasion in the next week or so. But that's what we have under the law here. Point number 8. If the state has not issued a card within 45 days, a copy of the application shall have the same force as the card. So in Oregon, when you turn in your paperwork, the minute you turn it in, you're legal, right? And a copy of that paperwork makes you legal. Not in Arizona. You'll have to turn it in, and then after 45 days, a month and a half, if they haven't gotten you a card, then your paperwork makes you legal. Number 9, patients and caregivers must submit fingerprints to law enforcement and sign a statement that they will not divert marijuana to non-patients. So that could be if they catch you diverting to someone else sometime, they could use that statement that you signed, a legal document that you signed as an affidavit. You wouldn't do that. Might be another way to get you in more trouble. Let's see here. Number 10, patients and caregivers may share marijuana with other patients for free, as long as they don't knowingly cause the patient to exceed 2.5 ounces. So you can give marijuana, you cannot sell marijuana to other patients. You cannot even take reimbursements. Remember, the only person that can be reimbursed for expenses is a patient's own caregiver. So you can't reimburse another patient, only for free. And they don't knowingly cause the patient to exceed 2.5 ounces. So if you knew that person, the patient just went and got their 2.5 ounces of dispensary and you gave them some more marijuana, if you knew they already had 2.5, you'd be busted for giving them too much. Number 11, nonprofit medical marijuana dispensaries are allowed. So yes, there will be dispensaries in the state of Arizona. Up to 124 of them, I believe. However, when it comes to home grow rights, we mentioned this earlier. Number 12, a patient who lives within 25 miles of a dispensary may not cultivate their own medical marijuana. Yeah, I don't know, man. So basically, if you live in a city, you're not going to be able to grow your own, right? Because if you live in the city, that's probably where most of the dispensaries will be. You'll be within 25 miles of one. You can't grow your own. Probably the only people to be allowed to grow their own are the people living out in the rural areas where they're not within 25 miles of a dispensary. Furthermore, I wonder what happens if you live in one of these areas where you can grow and then a dispensary opens up 20 miles away. Once the new dispensary opens up, are you then from that point on forbidden to grow? The way I read it, it looks like that's the case. So if you're in Arizona thinking, I'll go buy some place out in the sticks so that I can grow my own, well, don't buy a place too close to where a city might expand or where a dispensary might open, because your place could be worthless as soon as that new place opens. Number 13, patients and caregivers may not possess medical marijuana on a school bus, at a school, or a correctional facility. All right, that's pretty standard. You'd expect that. Number 14, patients may not smoke marijuana on public transportation or in any public place. Okay, can't smoke your weed on the bus. That makes sense. Now, this is a good one. Number 15, patients may not drive under the influence of marijuana. However, marijuana metabolites alone shall not be proof of impairment. So you have to prove actual impairment by the and it's not just marijuana metabolites, it's also any concentrations of marijuana too low to reasonably cause impairment. So even if they took the blood test, if your nanograms per milliliter were below, say, 5 or 4 or so, then that wouldn't be enough to cause impairment. They're going to have to come up with some rule making on that one to determine what levels actually determine impairment. We'll have to see. Number 16. Fees for nonprofit dispensaries shall not be greater than $5,000 or $1,000 for a renewal license. Translation: your dispensary fee is going to cost $5,000. They're not going to make it lower than that. You're going to make it as much as they can. So $5,000 for a dispensary license. Number 17, dispensaries must cultivate their own medical marijuana, which they can do on site or at a separate physical address. Okay, so the dispensary has to grow their own. Now, they don't have to grow it at the dispensary. They can grow it at a separate location, but they have to grow their own. Number 18, patients and caregivers may give marijuana to dispensaries, but not for any compensation. So forget the California situation where you can grow your own and then, sell some to the collective or the dispensary. That's not going to happen. First of all, you'd have to live 25 miles away from the dispensary before you could grow your own. And then if you want to give some to the dispensary, you can only give it. You cannot be paid for it, compensated for it, reimbursed for it, expensed for it in any way. Number 19, neither the dispensary nor the cultivation address may be within 500 feet of a school. Number 20, there can be no more than one dispensary for every 10 pharmacies, except that there can be at least one dispensary in every county. Now, currently there are something like 1,240 pharmacy licenses in Arizona, which means that there could be up to 124 dispensaries in the state. Now, remember, each one of those dispensaries has to grow their own marijuana. They cannot buy it from other dispensaries that are growing their own marijuana, right? Okay. Let's see, where are we? Number 21, the cards or recommendations for visiting patients from other medical marijuana states will be recognized in Arizona, but they may not shop at the dispensaries. This means reciprocity. This means that if you're a medical marijuana state from any of the other 14 medical marijuana states, your card or recommendation will protect you in Arizona. That means there are now 5 states with reciprocity. Arizona, all the M's, Montana, Michigan, and Maine all recognize cards, and Rhode Island. So any one of those 5 states will recognize your card no matter where that card or recommendation comes from. Number 22, patients in assisted care facilities can be limited to non-smoking methods of use and only in certain areas. So they could force you, if you're in the nursing home, they could force you to use a vaporizer, force you to use cookies or tinctures or whatever. They can legislate that you do not smoke it. However, the facilities don't have to enact any limitations. It's just saying if they do have the right to limit you to non-smoking and limit you to using it only in certain areas. Number 23, dispensaries must have a single secure entrance, a strong security system, and no medicating is allowed on the premises, so there will be no candy shops in Arizona. Number 24, now this is interesting. Number 24, dispensaries must track patients' acquisitions to ensure they receive no more than 2.5 ounces from any dispensaries within a 14-day period. Now, this is going to require computer databases, folks. Computer databases tracking how much medical marijuana you are acquiring from what dispensary you are acquiring it. And this moves on to number 25. There shall be a secure web-based confirmation system accessible by law enforcement and dispensaries that reveals patients' and caregivers' names, but not their addresses, and how much marijuana the patient received from all dispensaries in the past 60 days. Law enforcement or any dispensary can look that up and find out how much marijuana you have gotten in the past 60 days. Number 26. Non-patients cannot be punished for being in the vicinity of lawful medical marijuana use by patients or by providing paraphernalia to patients. So it's okay if you're a non-card holder, you'll be able to be around people that use medical marijuana, or if you sell them a pipe, you'll be okay. Number 27, schools and landlords. This is a good one. Schools and landlords cannot discriminate against medical marijuana patients and caregivers unless they'd be subject to some federal penalty like loss of money or loss of licensing. So that's good news, protecting patients from discrimination. Number 28, employers cannot discriminate against patients and caregivers, and a positive test for marijuana metabolites is not cause for disciplining or terminating a patient. That's right, job protection for medical marijuana patients, and your P test does not count in discriminating you. Number 29, medical facilities and treatments, including organ transplants, cannot be denied to patients because of their medical use. That's right. Cannot kick them off the organ transplant list. And finally, number 30, parental rights of patients cannot be denied solely for their medical marijuana use. You cannot take someone's kids just because they're a medical marijuana patient. I'm Radical Russ. I've got the text to the full measure up at stash.normal.org/AZMedMJ. Stash.normal.org/AZMedMJ. For Cannabis Carrie and Ganja John, I'm Radical Russ. Stay tuned for hour 2 if you're listening live. For those on the podcast, thanks for listening. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is Normal Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.